it draws you in with its sort of unreality. It's like that uncanny valley where it feels so close to reality, and then you just get these little tweaks, and you're like, wait, what are you talking about? What's happening here?
Yeah.
And I think, I think anyone who's writing needs to have some basic understanding of human relations, human emotions, because you're not gonna, pull in a reader without that. I think they need to recognize something in the book. But beyond that, I mean, you can make anything happen. That's what's so fun about it.
Welcome to Book Reporter Talks To, where our guest today is Alexandra Andrews, the author of the debut novel, Who is Maud Dixon? This is a Book Reporter Bets On selection, and I want you to know that I sat down on Saturday, about 2 Saturdays ago, and read this book for the entire day because it is that terrific. It was a propulsive kind of a read, and really, who is Maud Dixon? And we're going to get into that. So welcome, Alexandra. So nice to have you here. Let's start out by you telling us, who is Maud Dixon and what is this?
Well, I'm going to make you buy the book, so I'm not going to tell you that. But I'll give you a short answer, which is Who is Maud Dixon is about a very ambitious young woman who wants very badly to be a famous writer. And she lands the job as the assistant to a very famous writer who writes under a pseudonym. And one thing leads to another, and she decides that she's going to steal her life.
Yes, and she's going to take every little bit of it. As the book opens, Florence is working for a publisher, ready to make her mark in publishing. And it's funny because I worked at Condé Nast when I first started out, and every assistant sits down at the chair, ready to become the editor. So while I didn't work in publishing, I understand the whole thing. So Maud has written this book called Mississippi Foxtrot, and she wrote it while she was working at a textbook company as a proofreader. So what were you doing when you wrote Maud?
That's a good question. I was not working at a textbook company. Oh my God, I went through so many zigs and zags in my own career. I started out in investigative journalism, which I was terrible at. And then I ended up copywriting for a long time for fashion brands. And then I went and got my master's in graphic design, which was a bit of a boondoggle. And I mean, throughout this whole period, I was basically just copywriting to support myself. So yeah, copywriting is what I was doing while I wrote this book. Writing so far off from proofreading.
Writing great copy. So you never worked in publishing. You never worked at a publishing house.
I never did, no.
So you just imagined it quite well, because you certainly have nailed what that house was like.
Well, I interned at the Paris Review when I was just out of college. I worked at ProPublica. I've sort of been around the publishing milieu enough. My husband works in publishing, not in book publishing, but in magazine publishing. So I had sort of gotten a feel for it. And, journalism is sort of the same way. You start, it's a bit like an apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm. And you also don't know how many people make the cut after a year. Like a lot of times people are gone within a year because they're going back to Illinois and go, I really don't want to live in New York and do this. Like,
I know. I mean, I'm 37. I still think that. Like, why am I paying this rent?
Why am I doing this? And why am I sitting and doing this?
Yeah.
So I just love at the beginning, Florence has this one night stand with someone in power at the publisher. Okay. And it really undoes her emotionally and her career. But right away, you're sitting there going, is she really innocent here? Because it takes this really dark turn. And it's funny. I went back and looked this morning, and it's really, her career takes a change after page 60 or 62 in the book. It's not that long, but the setup is so good that I really thought it was halfway through the book when this ended up happening. So just tell us, was she really the victim, or did she sort of connive herself around a little?
I think both. I'm glad you said that, actually, because I really wanted to have this feeling where she just felt a little bit off at the beginning, and it really could have gone either way. She could have just been a little quirky, or it could have been something more. And I actually went back and would add a few things or take them away to try to get the right balance. But yeah, I think she's of that age in her early 20s when you're really malleable. You can go either way. And I think part of her was victimized, and I think part of her was conniving.
Mm-hmm.
and she's sort of figuring out which direction she's going to go in, which you ultimately find out is not the good one.
Not the good one. No. But I feel like up front we see strains of who she becomes later in the book, and we're going to give nothing away.
I know. I'm trying to be careful. I always give something away.
Very, very careful. But I feel like we're seeing her DNA, and I was really interested to see you did go back and finesse her more like later on, because I feel like you had to write her and then really define her even more, like just go back and see what to do. So was that something that did happen along the way?
A little bit of both. It's so hard when you're writing, you don't know what a reader is going to pick up on. I would give this book to people and I wouldn't know whether like all the twists were totally predictable. You can't get that distance as a writer. So I think I realized, I thought I had made her like a little bit off enough, but I had some feedback that I should make her like seed in a bit more of these like darker foreshadowing moments.
Yeah. And there's some right at the beginning, there's some things that she does that are so out of the ordinary, but how she gets away with them at the job too is like pretty amazing. Probably the author we wonder about most right now is Elena Ferrante. Like, who is Elena Ferrante? And of course, when Lying Life of Adults came out last fall, everybody was back going, okay, man, woman, da, da, da. Right. Did you think about her when you were creating your Maud Dixon character?
I absolutely did, yes. I find her really fascinating. And I was when the idea for this book came right at that point where Elena Ferrante fever was really at its pitch. And I loved those books. And I was interested by this fascination with who she really was, which I didn't totally share. I was more of the mind that you can just let these books stand for themselves. And then I found it so sad when that journalist like tracked her down and like went through the payroll at this agency. It seemed so like silly, like, but why? She wants to be anonymous. I don't understand this urge to know who's writing these. I mean, I do understand it a little bit, but I was interested in both the kind of mind that wants to write anonymously, and the kind of mind that will not allow that to happen.
Yeah, that's exactly. And with her, whenever we feature her, there is no picture. So there's that air of mystery right away of, there is no picture. And there are a number of other authors who have written under pseudonyms and they never share their pictures as well. And it's always, who is this? The whole industry starts trying to guess. I mean, you can even think about when Robert Galbraith was actually J.K. Rowling. And people are like, well, will it be a success on its own, or does it have to have her name attached to it and know who she is?
Come out even before it was published, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And it was like, well, wait a second, is this going to be a success, or does it really need the name attached? And it's just, I think, really, really interesting. So in your book, Maud, we're not going to tell too much more, lives in a sleepy little town upstate New York. She's off the grid. And she has this line that said, "He lives well who is well hidden." So let's talk about that line because it's so great. He who lives well is well hidden. I like it. I'd like to hide.
I know. I think there is sort of, I think we all have that impulse to hide. I'm somebody who really does not show anybody my rough drafts. I don't like anybody to see the process. And I think that it can be applied to my writing, but also just sort of to life. I switched schools for high school and I decided I was going to go by a new name, by Allie instead of Alexandra. And, there's this urge to start again and have this radical reinvention, but you don't want anyone to see the process. You sort of want it to be like that. And I think there's something pleasurable about being in the dark while that happens, and being in the dark to sort of figure out who you want to be.
Yeah. So you live in New York City now. Did you ever think about living in a sleepy little town? Was this a little bit of, oh my gosh, I could just be there, go get the fish store, go to the cheese store?
In my head, I think I could do it. And then I go to the country and I can't stand it for 2 hours. I mean, I was raised in the city. I'm a real city gal. I like nature, but I always, when I go to my coffee shop in the morning.
Yeah, that's exactly. So even the last year didn't undo you. It didn't sit there and say, let's run for the burp. No.
No, we doubled down. We bought a place in the city.
See, it's like they had the opposite effect, of what's going on. You know, Maud has no social media footprint, and neither do you. And I really, it's interesting that at a time where I feel like authors are like me, all over the place, to not have that deliberate on your part.
Well, you know, somebody else mentioned this, and I always felt like I had a normal amount of. I'm on Instagram, you know, which is the one thing I do, and I still feel like I do spend too much time on it. I wish I spent less time on it, but yeah, Twitter makes me a little nervous. I feel like I can get very confrontational. I don't want to get involved with any of that.
Right.
Instagram I enjoy. I think there's a part of me that wants some walls. I don't want complete strangers looking at pictures of my children. I can't totally articulate why, but it makes me feel a little exposed.
Well, I think that so many people right now, their children's lives are so public, like they do something or whatever, that you may regret that later on.
Or they may resent it, yeah.
I mean, they're going to regret later on that you took some picture of them, and some of them could be all but YouTube stars because they're out there that much. But it's like, what do you really want to share? But, and it's interesting to me too, because everybody does edited versions of their life. Like if we make a bad looking dinner, it doesn't get a picture. Like, let's get real. Only the great looking ones do.
Yeah.
And I actually put up this Chinese meal I made the other night, and I'm telling you right now, it looked horrible. And I said, it's really tasting good, but I felt like I had to apologize for the way it looked.
Right.
Yeah. So we have this whole thing that we're doing, you know, blah, blah, blah. So when Florence meets Maud, and we're not going to talk about really how they came together, but when Florence meets Maud, which ends up happening, she uses her for self-improvement. And I really like this because she starts looking at what Maud does, what she wears, and she can't afford that brand, so she gets another one. But she's actually studying like the school of Maud, of this is what I'm going to be like. How much fun was it writing that? Like who you're going to be, make me like her.
Yeah, it's like those movie montage, you know, the makeover montage. I always love those. I mean, I think Florence is somebody who really wants a mentor and a model, and she's never had that. And then, you know, she's trying very hard to figure out who she is, but she has no pattern to follow, and she's sort of just like drifting. And I think she feels a real sense of relief and excitement when she finds someone she actually respects. I would say she's a pretty harsh judge of character. It was fun because I was writing this book about somebody in the early 20s while I was in my mid 30s. And so, you know, sort of like I could play both roles. I remember so well what it's like to be figuring out who you want to be, who you want to emulate. And I mean, really looking at these women with such envy, but like envy is sort of the engine that makes you become, that makes you ambitious. That makes you change, you know, stop being a child, I suppose. And then I also had the perspective of being 35, where much more comfortable with who I am. And, you know, I've got my opinions and, you know, I'll tell them to you if you want to hear them. And, you know, there's a little bit more of Maud in me there. So the most fun I had while writing this book was writing their dialogue. And it almost felt like, you know, this me now who's a bit tougher and a bit more cynical talking to the me then who was a bit more nervous and wide-eyed and, you know, changeable.
Stars in your eyes. My career can go any place. And then you sit there and go, it's not really going to, but we're not going to tell you that right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nobody tells you. They tell you can do anything, but that is not the truth.
No, it's really not the truth. It was funny because when I worked at Mademoiselle magazine, we used to travel the country and do makeovers on people, like literally, like we'd be in like North Dakota doing makeovers on people and at one point somebody said to me, what do you think the problem is with the magazine? I said, oh, it's really clear. It's what we think is happening in the country. It's what's really happening in the country and what the advertisers think are happening in the country. And they're three completely different things if you go and travel around the country. And I think that that's something that you're really thinking of, is both these people did not come from New York. They both came from different places and came into the city with this idea of what you're supposed to do when you get there, and then realize, is there really a prescription?
Right. Yeah.
It's like, you know, that was going on. Also, Maud says that all stories have to have some basis in reality. Otherwise, it won't feel authentic. But of course, reality is malleable. Great line, one of many, but especially applicable here. So let's talk about that line, because it's like reality. What is reality? Not real sure.
I just started the new Ishiguro last night, and I was telling my husband how it draws you in with its sort of unreality. It's like that uncanny valley where it feels so close to reality, and then you just get these little tweaks, and you're like, wait, what are you talking about? What's happening here? Yeah. And I think anyone who's writing needs to have some basic understanding of human relations, human emotions, because you're not gonna, pull in a reader without that. I think they need to recognize something in the book. But beyond that, I mean, you can make anything happen. That's what's so fun about it. There are no rules, whereas reality can feel very frustratingly rule bound.
Yeah. And actually, the book's tagline is so perfect of how far would you go to claim the life you always wanted? And you've got two people who both are doing that. They're both going as far as they can go to get the life they wanted. And then they meet each other. And that's always gets really interesting. So dialogue's the one thing I really liked about the book, the snappy dialogue back and forth. Did you have that nailed right from the beginning, or did you amp it up?
I think I had it from the beginning. Actually, the first draft was a bit more campy. It was very like, I don't know. I don't know, farther removed from reality. And but I always wanted that dialogue to feel very like Preston Sturges, like boom, boom, boom. It's just fun to write, and I hope it's fun to read.
Well, do you know what I was thinking too, is I saw that you wrote copy for Barney's for years. Like you wrote that fashion copy. And I feel like there's a line between like the two of them, because it's very aspirational at that point. It's very like, you want this coat, and why you want this coat.
You need this $12,000 dress. Yeah.
Exactly. And you have to have this $12,000 dress because you feel like it's going to solve everything in your life by getting this, because the copy is written so much that it's like reeling you in completely until you look at the number and your checkbook and you realize they're not going to come together.
There was a part of me that like would actually feel a little bit like icky about what I was doing, because I just, I know that people don't need, another $6,000 jacket, but
well, especially these days, because I'm sitting there going, what is luxury right now? Like, what if luxury is leaving the house?
Childcare, yeah.
Luxury is leaving the house, eating out in a restaurant, again, indoors. I mean, a friend of mine was saying,
hug.
Yeah. A friend said the other night they went out with some friends and they said, let's eat outside. And she's just there like, okay, let me just go over this. I'm sitting in the suburbs in my winter coat with my sweaters on underneath. And this is supposed to be fun. And she says, well, yes, because we're close to the heater. And she's like, I would never eat in my backyard. I'd never say, let's go out in the backyard and eat in the dead of winter. But now that's something we're aspiring to do.
Yeah. I mean, I had New Year's Eve dinner outside. I thought I really like it. I hope year-round alfresco dining is here to stay.
Yeah. And I have a funny feeling that might happen. I think that there are people that are saying, oh, this will be really great. There's so many streets. Remember, it was a couple of years ago, how many streets were converted to pedestrian areas and stuff like that. And now, like, what's going to happen? So there's a moment, though, where Florence is very easily able to slip into Maud's world. Very easy access on the back end with these computers of you can take on somebody else's identity pretty quickly. And you had me really wondering, do we have everything locked down here enough? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Did something spur the idea of, oh, somebody could really get your stuff pretty quickly?
Well, actually, I was writing this book while I lived in Paris. And one night while we were sleeping, our apartment got robbed and our computers got taken. And I just realized, I'm logged into my email. You can go to any account and say, change my password. And they just send a link to your email and there you go. I mean, and I never close my email. I never log out of my email. I mean, it's just sort of the portal to everything. And I realized how exposed I was. So yeah, that sort of made me realize that a personal assistant, they really have everything. I mean, that's their job, to be used for the boring parts of life.
Yeah, it's like, you want to go buy this online? Here's it's all set up. It's all, you can just go do anything that you need to do.
Yeah. I worked with a personal assistant briefly, and I was getting, I had the credit card, and I was, she would send me to buy these $600 gifts at Bergdorf Goodman. And it was so fun. It's so fun to like be that person for 9 hours.
Yeah, it's like, oh, just take the black car and go over here and get this and
Yeah.
get that and bring it all back. Yeah, it's
And you can convince yourself that it's really, it's really you walking into the store with your credit card. And
right. And they treat you differently when you sit there and buy that much stuff.
totally, yes.
It's like everybody's like, oh, would you like this? Oh, yes, maybe I would. No, that's not authorized. That sounds completely good. Your characters morph so cleverly. And did you see them in what you were going to do right from the start, or were you playing around with them a little bit more?
I wouldn't say I was playing with the characters so much, but the plot did go through a lot of changes.
Mhm.
I think I had 24 drafts of this novel by the end of it.
Wow.
And yeah, the plot was a bit different. There was not as much Maud actually in the original plot. And then I just had so much fun writing her that I kept having to create opportunities for her to stick around. So yeah, I would say the characters I sort of had, but then I was having such fun, like having them play with each other, that the plot sort of changed to channel their interaction.
Yeah, and they both are playing games. Let's just say they both play games quite well, and to set that. So did you outline in advance? Like, did you have one of these walls where everything was all created in advance, or did you just go?
I tried to outline, and then and then I didn't use it. So, and I'm now in the process of writing my second book, and I'm like, this time it's going to be so much easier if I outline. And I just think I'm just somebody who needs to write and figure it out, which is very frustrating because you end up throwing out, whole chapters. But I need the voices in my head, and it's very hard for me to like do it very like rationally and dryly.
And I think that what happens too is you start to see something happen, and then you have to say, well, wait a second, how did they get to that point? Like, what, wait, we can invent a much better way for them to get to the point that will confuse the reader even more than they already are.
Yeah.
Like, who is Maud? So why was Morocco their destination? Have you been there? Because Maud is, just a little backtrack, Maud is writing her second book. She's had this very successful book, Mississippi Foxtrot, which I thought was like a great, funny title too. So she's written Mississippi Foxtrot. That's the hot book, everybody. And now she's writing her second book. It's going to be partially set in Morocco. So they head off there. Like, why Morocco?
It probably won't come as a huge surprise to hear that I was very inspired by Patricia Highsmith while I was writing this. And she always has wonderful, wonderful settings. So I wanted to do some place that felt very, aspirational in one sense, and also very different from where they both come from and where the first half of the book takes place. I think when you're in these, your settings are totally different. You yourself become a bit more changeable. And I wanted to go there to research it, which I did. This was while I was living in Paris. And it's a 2-hour flight. It's so close. And it's just, it feels so different, and really lovely. I wish I had been able to stay for longer. I can't wait to get back.
Yeah. So I tell you, this is the year where international travel has been going to the food section, the international food section at the grocery store. So I love the exoticness of it. So from my couch, I felt like I was beamed into Morocco, and you really captured the place, the smells, the bazaars, the marketplace, and the remoteness as well. And how if you're somebody who's come there from this country and you don't really know your way around or what's happening, you could get yourself in a lot of trouble pretty quickly, and I think that that was really, really good. So I think I read that you had a baby last March, like kick off the pandemic with a baby.
Yeah,
and
born at the exact moment that New York shut down. To the minute.
Always a very iconic birthday going forward. And you have another young child too, which made it even more challenging. Was the book done before we went into lockdown, or did you get to rewrite?
It was mostly done. I did not have major edits to do. I had copy edits to do, and it was all sort of laid out, and I was going through changing a few things, which was difficult. My husband was working. He did take some paternity leave, but he was working full time. No childcare, toddler baby. It was a difficult few months, but I think it was difficult for everyone. So I don't want to.
Yeah, you were home with the baby, but guess what? So was everyone else. Everyone
Right.
else was home. They just did have the baby there too. You know, was this always the title of the book? Is Who is Maud Dixon? Like, was that?
No, we've actually went through many iterations. When I first wrote it, it was a sharper shadow, which nobody liked except for me. And I think it's actually, now I realize it's very hard to say. It's a bit like World Juror from 30 Rock. But yeah, I went through a few iterations, but I do like the one we ended up with. I hope it feels intriguing and specific.
Well, it's intriguing also with the question mark right on the front screen, because from the cover, because you're just looking right away and like, wait a second, who is? And that line going down the middle, you're sitting there like, okay, what does that mean? Like, you know.
I know. The cover designer did such a great job.
Was this the first cover? Did they go through a couple of iterations?
The second cover.
Second cover.
The first one was it was similar. It was a bit like a bit darker in tone, and I wanted I was trying, you know, this isn't one of those thrillers where it's like very grim and seedy, and I wanted sort of to communicate a sense of fun.
Yeah. And what I really like is that's what I'm seeing in it, but I'm also seeing this big question mark. I mean, it leaps out at you of who is it? And like, what are you going to do from there? I don't know. Boy, when you get to know her, oh my gosh. But it's this book that you're going to really want to talk about as soon as you finish reading it. You're going to want to talk about it with people. I say it'd be great for book groups because it's got that publishing side of the story to it on so many different levels. It's the aspirational, I'm working there, because people always like stories of inside publishing. I think there are 3 books coming out this year of people working in publishing.
Oh, really?
Authors in publishing. Yeah, it's like really crazy. But then also Therese Plummer does a really great job of narrating. Did you pick her for this?
I mean, they sent me one option and I said, she's fantastic. So I didn't really pick her, but I okayed her or I thumbs up her.
No, it was really, really, really great. And Universal Pictures has already picked up the film, like the film rights. Are you involved in that at all?
I mean, I've had some conversations. Yeah, I've had conversations with the writer director and with some of the producers. I think, you know, we all have the same idea for what we hope this movie can be. And yeah, I mean, I'm not doing the script. That's just out of my wheelhouse. But
But you know, you write cinematically. You really write cinematic. Like I could see that they could pick this up and go to script from here because the writing is just so strong and it's, you know, really, really terrific. So did you, are you working on something now? Like how far along are you? Like we're going to see in a year, 2 years, or like, good luck, Carol, you know?
Oh, Lord. I am working on something. I am finding it very difficult. I don't know if it's the old second book problem or the old pandemic problem or both of them, but I'm getting there. And it feels similar to Who is Maud Dixon in a lot of ways. I think I'm just interested in certain themes and I will continue to explore those until I run out of things to say.
Well, you know, it's really interesting. Most of the authors that I've talked to this year said this is the hardest year they've ever had to write.
Oh, that makes me feel so much better.
Oh, no. Many have said to me, we've had a really hard time writing this year, sitting down and writing, sitting down and getting out of your own head because there's so much going on. I mean, when you really think back on over the last year of all the things that have happened and like, it's just been like 10 years. Like there's times I sit there and I go, really, was that just really a year ago? And I think when we hit the anniversary, which would have been your son's birthday in March, by the time we hit the birthday, it's like, oh my God, we're still doing this. Like, how can we still be doing this? And I think that it's taken a toll on people because let's face it, what you're living right now, you couldn't write in a book. Like you couldn't have figured out that everybody be like, if I say that if an author showed up, if you walked into your editor's office and say, I've got this idea. Okay, there's going to be something that's going to happen. Everybody's going to be home. The children aren't going to go to school. We're not going to go out to eat. We're not going to see anybody. We're going to wear masks. And you just like go down the whole list. They'd say, oh no, cut back 50% and maybe we can talk, right? Yeah. And instead we had the whole thing. So I think we were living the novel. We were living the novel for the last year, you know? So I think that the readers enjoy and remember, you know, all she wanted was a different life. Like there was this great line, like right inside the book is all she ever wanted was a different life. And when you finish reading, you're going to think that's applicable. That's a whole book group discussion. Just that line of all she wanted was a different life. And the question as you finish reading the book is, who wanted a different life? And you can play with that too. So I congratulate you, because you had me going like right from the beginning, and you kept me right through to the end. And there are readers where we can't give anything away. Someday I want to have you on in a year where we can actually have people talked about it and we can go in depth more. But I think it's just such a treat, and I congratulate you, because it was a big feat to pull off for a debut novel.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's
Yeah.
nice.
So thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing
such fun.
What you get back next. We're like ready to hear. And to our readers, thanks you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.